She was screaming at her professor in the middle of a crowded hallway. Students watching. Other professors watching, sobbing that he'd given her herpes. The only problem? He hadn't. Nobody had. Her husband was standing in the back of the hallway trying not to laugh. 12 years ago, Daniel met the woman he was sure he'd spend his life with. We'll call her Rachel. They dated for 2 years in college, got engaged, and threw a huge wedding. Her family was well off, small southern town money. The kind of wedding everyone in her hometown showed up to. After the wedding, they both stayed in school. Daniel was grinding through a master's in engineering while also working full-time to keep them afloat. Rachel was finishing her doctorate in anthropology. It was tight, but they were building something. At least that's what Daniel thought. Then one summer, Rachel came home excited. One of her professors, we'll call him Mark, was organizing a 6-week religious studies trip to Jamaica and needed an aide. It paid well. She'd get to travel. Daniel didn't even hesitate. He told her to go. He was genuinely happy for her. Mark wasn't a stranger either. He'd been to their house. He'd smoked Daniel's weed on their couch, drank Daniel's beer out of their fridge. Daniel considered him a friend. While Rachel was in Jamaica, Daniel picked up extra shifts at work. Every single one of them went straight into their joint account. His plan was to match whatever she earned on the trip and surprise her when she came home. A little nest egg. A thank you for working hard. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Caribbean, Rachel and Mark were sleeping together in every hotel the trip stopped at. They'd been sleeping together for months before the trip even started. The whole thing had been built as an excuse to get away together. Daniel had no idea. He was just a guy working double shifts for his wife. When Rachel came home, things went back to normal. Or what Daniel thought was normal. Until a few weeks later, when one of the students from that trip tracked him down, pulled him aside, told him everything. Daniel didn't believe it. He couldn't. He went home that night and told himself the kid had to be wrong or confused or lying. But the doubt was already in. That night, while Rachel was asleep, he picked up her phone and started scrolling. The texts were clean. Too clean. But then he checked her voicemails, and there was one from Mark. Laughing about how Daniel had almost caught them. Daniel's hands were shaking by the time he opened her laptop. And that's where it all was. Emails. Piles of them. Weeks and weeks of messages between Rachel and Mark, going back months, mocking Daniel for being clueless, joking about him working overtime while they were on vacation together, bragging about sleeping together in Daniel's own bed, laughing at him. He sat at the kitchen table in the dark and read every single one. Here's the part that surprised even Daniel. He didn't wake her up, he didn't flip the table. He closed the laptop, put it back exactly where it was, and went to bed next to her like nothing had happened. For almost 2 weeks, he just watched. He said later it was like someone had taken the blindfold off. Every little thing suddenly made sense. The late nights at the library, the phone flipping face down on the counter, the way she'd started flinching when he touched her shoulder. How had he missed all of it? But one detail in particular got under his skin. Daniel and Rachel had a long-standing inside joke, a little intimate tradition, something they shared together at home. And while they hadn't been intimate in weeks, Daniel noticed that tradition was still being used up. Something that was meant for the two of them was quietly being enjoyed by someone else, in his own house, in his own bed. That was the moment the sadness flipped into something else entirely. He stopped feeling heartbroken. He stopped feeling stupid. He got very, very calm. And he started planning. Daniel's plan had 2 moving parts, and he needed them to land on the exact same day. Part 1 happened at night, while Rachel was asleep. He picked up her phone, deleted his own contact out of it, and then went into Mark's contact and swapped Mark's phone number for his own. So now, when Rachel thought she was texting Mark, she'd actually be texting Daniel. And when Daniel texted her, her phone would light up with Mark's name. He barely slept. He said it felt like being 5 years old on Christmas Eve. The next morning, Rachel got in the shower. Daniel waited until he heard the water running, then sent a text from Mark. Something like, "Are you itching? I need to tell you something." A minute later, his phone buzzed. Her reply. "Yeah, actually I am. Why?" He took a breath and typed back the line he'd been rehearsing in his head all night. He told her he thought it had cleared up, that he was so sorry, that he had herpes. And now, she probably did too. From inside the bathroom, he heard this tiny, strangled squeak over the sound of the shower. He had to physically cover his mouth so she wouldn't hear him losing it in the kitchen. But he wasn't done. He needed her angry. Furious. The kind of angry that makes people do something they can't take back. So he kept typing. He told her it was time to end things between them, that a new semester was starting, that he had a little crush on another teaching assistant he wanted to pursue. This was a woman who, by his own description, had grown up never being told no, never been dumped, never been rejected. And now she was being dumped, infected, and replaced, all in a single text thread by a balding 50-year-old professor. When she came out of the bathroom, her eyes were red. But under the tears, Daniel could see pure rage. She sat at the kitchen table in her robe, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, squirming, silent, spiraling. She picked up her phone and started typing. Pages and pages, everything she was feeling, sent it all to Mark. Daniel, sitting 5 feet away, read it as it came in, and then he sent his final reply, something along the lines of, "Thanks for the good times, but please keep this between us. I don't want to hurt my chances with anyone else." She stood up so fast the chair almost tipped, grabbed her keys, walked out the front door without a word. Daniel knew exactly where she was going. The second she pulled out of the driveway, he executed part 2. He opened her laptop, went into her doctorate files, the dissertation she'd been working on for years, every note, every draft, and wiped it. All of it. Then he got in his car and followed her to campus. He parked a few lots over so she wouldn't spot him, walked into the building, found Mark's office. And there, in the middle of the hallway, in front of professors, students, teaching assistants, and half the department, Rachel was screaming at Mark that he'd given her herpes. Mark was frozen, bright red, confused out of his mind because, of course, he hadn't given her anything. She was ugly crying in front of every colleague and classmate she had, every person whose respect she'd been trying to earn for years. Daniel stood at the back of the hallway and watched the entire thing. He said he didn't even care that half those people now thought he had herpes too. It was worth it. The fallout was nuclear. Mark lost his job over a university code of conduct violation. He doesn't teach college anymore. Last Daniel heard, he's a high school teacher now. Rachel and Daniel divorced the following year, the minute the state-mandated separation period was up. Daniel walked away with most of the assets, including the savings he'd worked so hard to build. Rachel never finished her doctorate. Last he checked, she's a stay-at-home mom selling Herbalife on Facebook. The wildest part of this whole story? Daniel didn't raise his voice once. He didn't throw a single punch. He just gave 2 people exactly enough rope, and they strung themselves up in public while he watched from the back of the room. The lesson, I guess, is that the quiet ones you've been laughing at are usually the ones paying the closest attention. If you want more stories like this one, you know where to find them.